All right, team, it's John Kraska tonight from EveryLibrary and the EveryLibrary Institute. It is Friday, the 11th of April. We are coming around to the end of National Library Week 2025. It's been a great week doing programming with nonfiction authors. I've gotten a chance to do quite a bit of very cool conversations. And the ones that I am the most happy to be able to do, no offense to everybody I've talked to, memoirists, natural history people, folks talking about, and then my colleague Gigi Howard was talking about baseball, about like all the good nonfiction stuff. But for me, this is where it's at for me personally and professionally. The cookbooks, the baking books, you have found, folks, the intersection of what I like to do for fun besides write good laws about libraries. I'm thrilled tonight to be able to bring in two people who are in that genre, both from Harper Celebrate and Byrn, the cookbook, the bake. What do you say, Anne? Is it cookbook author or is it baking book? Like, what do you like to say? And you gonna get off mute? Sorry.
Yeah, I'm a cookbook author.
I think you are too. That's fantastic. I want to make sure I got the right words in my mouth. And then Dennis Prescott.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. Nice to see you both tonight. Thank you for taking the time. Let me read your official bios and we'll get into it. So, Anne Byrn is a New York Times bestselling food writer and the author of Baking in the American South, published by Harper Celebrate, with more than 4 million copies of the Cake Mix Doctor series in print. Anne brings history, storytelling, and soul to the art of Southern baking. Her career spans decades as a journalist, cookbook author, and teacher with appearances in major national media and contributions to some of my favorite magazines, Bon Appetit, Food 52, and The Bitter Southerner, which I don't know, Anne. I'm going to have to get into that one.
A good one.
Dennis Prescott is a celebrated chef, Netflix host of Restaurants on the Edge, and cookbook author. His latest book, Cook with Confidence, is published also by Harper Celebrate and offers 100 recipes and pro techniques to help home cooks level up. Known for his visually stunning dishes and passion for food access, Dennis is also a World Vision and Chef's Maestro ambassador. All right, this, like I said in my introduction, people ask me, John, what do you do to recover from something like the shutdown of the Federal Institute of Museum and Library Services? John, what do you do when what do you do to get your energy back up when you have just done a ballot measure to help win new funding for a library? And I say, I smoke meat. There is a chance. Seriously, like there's the men of my age, I'm in my early 50s, have either made a decision, and Dennis, I don't know if you're there yet or not. You either have to get into Civil War or World War II books, or you start smoking meat.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I could talk for the next half an hour, so I certainly won't. But I fell in love with food in Nashville because I fell in love with Southern barbecue. As an East Coast Canadian who grew up on a steady diet of lobster, Southern barbecue, proper barbecue wasn't part of my world. Flash forward, part of my day job is I'm one of the culinary ambassadors for Traeger Grills, who's a massive barbecue company. So grilling, smoking meats has been part of my life. I didn't have to wait until my early 50s to get into it. It's been part of my kind of culinary journey really for the last 20 years.
Oh, that's fantastic. I mean, what you're doing, Dennis, is about empowering home cooks in particular in this book. Like guys like me, I'm not going to enter a competition. I have fantasies about having maybe like 6 tables someplace for once in a while, right for my kitchen. But really, why the home cook? Why are you leaning into folks like me?
Because I'm one of those people. And I think, we all love to serve our friends, our family, great food that we're proud of. I think the best food in the world is accessible, attainable, beautiful, and delicious. And obviously we love going to the restaurant. We love celebrating at the restaurant, but the average home cook just doesn't have time. We don't have time on a Tuesday night to spend 3 hours getting, prepping all of these different sauces and ingredients and elements. We just want really great food that we're proud of and that we're proud of because we know what's in it. We know what the ingredients are, and it's beautiful and delicious, and we want to feed that to people we love. And I think, for me, I've always been passionate about taking people from here to here. Obviously there's other cookbooks that, if you want to go really hard and, on the culinary side of things and more of a restaurant side of things, those exist. But to me, my audience and my core audience has always been people who just want to serve their friends and their family delicious food.
That's fantastic. And Dennis mentioned Nashville on the way in. Your book, Baking in the American South, 200 recipes, 14 states. I know Nashville's near and dear to you.
Very much so. I'm a born and raised in Nashville. I didn't always live here. I was the food editor for the Atlanta newspapers for about 15 years, and I lived in England. But I've always, outside of 1 year of my life, lived in the South, and I've always baked. And similar to what Dennis was saying, I think my job all my life has been to make recipes approachable to the home cook. You know, how you write the recipe, the story that you tell. And through my years, I think what became more interesting to me was the story behind the recipe and the storytelling that was involved, and specifically the history behind the recipe. So in baking in the American South, I mean, it is a collection of recipes from pound cake to banana pudding, red velvet cake, whatever, but you're also going to read about historical events and things that have happened, railroads,
Oh, absolutely.
slavery, etc. I mean, I could not talk
And the
about
thing
the
that
South.
caught my attention here, and folks, I'm going to keep holding up the book here because it's a lovely palette too. By the way, the color scheme in here and the feelings of it, it feels southern, right around Easter. So it's kind of nice to be able to spend this time with you here. But I was delighted. Ran into Rosa Parks peanut butter pancakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that recipe's on file at Library of Congress. I mean, you can go online and find it. So much of the story of the region of the South, and maybe the rest of America and Canada too, is available online for you to go find out about. And I think people who do frequent libraries tend to be curious people, and curious people want to find out great recipes, and they want to find out the story behind them.
So, and let me stay with you for one more moment here with this. There's 200 recipes, 14 states from your own family tradition, but you're certainly very broad here. And you mentioned a number of different communities here.
Right.
What was delightful for you about your discovery process here?
Well, writing this book that's not about me, I loved it. This book was for the South. This book is written for the South, and it's about the South. But when I got the opportunity to write the book, I said, this is not about Anne. I mean, I snuck in maybe 2 or 3 recipes from my family, but I mean, yeah, this is about Rosa Parks, and this is about John Edgerton and John Martin Taylor and Zephyr Wright, who was the cook for the Lyndon Johnson family. I mean, this is about people who've not been talked about and have not been uplifted in their lives, and then sort of what kind of mark they left on Southern culture and Southern baking. So that was the biggest takeaway that I got. Yeah.
Well, and also, I mean, just from so I'm speaking about me as the family cook, my wife is a family baker. She did something really lovely the other day when she asked me, which pecan pie do you want? And the chance to dive in here, and I also said to her, well, which biscuits are you going to make me? Because that rich tradition of particular foods that have their own variations. Dennis, I ran into something I didn't know before about an Acadian version of chicken and dumplings called chicken fricot. How do you pronounce that?
Frico, yeah.
Okay, yeah. I mean that. I mean, excuse me. I've seen chicken and dumplings a million times. I've made chicken and dumplings a million times. The little variations here, and the fact that you get to cross, Canada on this and North America. Where do you discover your recipes?
It's interesting. I mean, that's a dish I grew up eating my entire life on the east coast of Canada in a place called the Acadian Shores, remote province called New Brunswick. And I'm not French first, but many people in my life are. The French folks who are here years ago, I'm certainly not a historian, so forgive that, but they were forced to leave for a time, and some of them went back home to France, and some of them went to Louisiana. And then when they were able to come back, they brought some of those traditions back with them. So we come from a very different, in the best way possible, and unique part of the French community. And obviously there's recipes that to me, you take for granted what you grow up with, and then you realize they're special once you get a little older. Recipe inspiration for me has, I've had the great fortune over the last 20 years to both on the travel television shows that I host, working with the World Food Program and the World Vision all over the world. I've had this beautiful opportunity to cook with moms. And community leaders and, folks over fire in Kenya and Somalia and Cambodia, literally all over the world. And I think, anytime that you cook with someone, you should learn. whether it's just they're chopping an onion different than me, or there's an ingredient I've never heard of, or I've never seen this taste this way. Why does this taste different? Food is learning, food is story, food is this beautiful collision of food and community at the table. It's when we gather. And I think, for me, all through that travel experience, whether it was growing up here on the East Coast of Canada, living in Nashville, and now just traveling all over, which I'm so grateful for, all of those are different little points in my palate, if that makes sense. And to me, as a recipe writer, and I think Anne would probably agree, it's very challenging to not incorporate those flavors, because you go, okay, now I know this. You can't unsee Oz. You have to now incorporate this into your kitchen, your recipes. More than that, food is story, like Anne said. And to me, I feel like we get this incredible opportunity to tell story. In my this book, I had this beautiful opportunity to tell stories of these moms who I cooked with in Kenya and Ethiopia and St. Lucia and wherever. Because at the end of the day, that recipe is not really mine. It becomes mine by proxy because I've learned it from somebody. But really, the actual recipe is owned by Joyce or by, Karen, or whoever taught me that. And it's an honor to be able to tell their story alongside the recipe.
Well, I think that's really fantastic. Both of you have done, I think, a wonderful job, and your editors should be credited with some really good work here as well. A lot of cookbooks I run into are really large print, not just for readability, but because they don't have a lot to say.
Yeah.
Both of you, yeah. Both of you, I mean, there's sustainability and access built into what you're trying to describe here. There's community building, of course, but there's also issues of justice about along those sustainability and access lines. Community building is not always neighborly. Sometimes it's fraught with peril, and food is one of those things that bridges, but it also is a thing that divides, because access to food and access to the justice of equitable, sustainable practices for farming and for harvesting and for distribution. I mean, you're both grappling with some things here that I really appreciate, not just as somebody who wants to pick up a really good tip about how are we going to work celery into this.
I mean, I don't want to jump in, Anne, so I'll certainly let you have the microphone here. But I do think, whether you speak to 2 people or 2 million people, we all have a voice and we should use that well. I think once you know something, certainly when it comes to food inaccess, hunger-related issues, food instability, it's very hard to not want to tell folks about that with love and kindness, but to educate folks that, at the end of the day, I think we could all agree that no one should go to bed hungry every night, or any night, sorry. And, and obviously, from a sustainability side of things, sustainability is so much more than just the ingredient. Sustainability of income, it's sustainability of opportunity. It's a very broad conversation. And to me, I'm a musician who became a chef by accident, who now has cooked for a very long time. But I was able to partner with the World Food Program and create the Chef's Manifesto. Through that, cook in a lot of parts of the world that are developing, and I just learn and become the best learner and the best storyteller that I possibly can. And I think with that information, it's impossible not to tell those stories. And hopefully that can inspire someone to move towards hope and change, at least in their own life.
Definitely. Yeah, I couldn't write a book just about Southern baking. I knew I wanted to include a chapter on cornbread and biscuits, but to me, you can't talk about those foods without talking about scarcity and access to food. Traditionally, through history, the South has been a very poor, isolated, rural region, maybe like parts of Canada where you're from as well, Dennis. And so as a result, I wanted to really connect with people who don't even thought the South was all about moonlight and magnolias. No, it's not. That was in a movie, right? But this is about reality, and the recipes that came out of reality and came out of scarcity, and were often made by mothers, were just getting by. And that's why the first chapter in the book is cornbread, because as far as access goes, everybody could grow corn. Not everybody could grow wheat, but everybody could grow corn. So there was something to eat. And how you made cornbread throughout the South, to me, was a mark of who we were and how we took a recipe and made and adapted it to our own personal taste and where we came from. So for me to say, oh, well, you only make cornbread without sugar, well, that's not right, or you only make cornbread with white cornmeal. I wanted to hear everybody else's story on how they made cornbread, because
Yeah.
that was going to unlock who they were. And then it went on from there into biscuits and cakes and pies. The recipe was the driver for me. I don't know if that's true for you, Dennis, but the recipe drove it. And when I got into complicated situations like talking about slavery or sugar and the sugar plantations and the rice plantations, which were just awful, awful, I would go back, I would state the facts, but I would go back to the recipe, because who was cooking with rice? Well, it was where you had rice, or you could afford rice, and you could afford that the enslaved to actually cultivate and serve rice to you. That was just mind opening to me as a native Southerner, to tell this complete story with love. I mean, I still love the South, as complicated and crazy as it is. I love the South because I do believe that we have the best baking in America. We do, and maybe in the world. But I do think we do, but we've got to own how we got it and where we came from.
It's very interesting that the DNA of the recipe reflects the terroir that it was born in, and in a pre-modern, pre-transportation, the apples that we have in my house right now are from, I think they're either from Peru or from Argentina today, because it's April in Chicago, and but pre-transportation networks, the DNA of that recipe encodes the community that it came from. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, railroads, access. Mobile, bananas came into Mobile and they were put on railroad cars and went up to Fulton, Kentucky, and then they went cross country. And your ancestors, Dennis, I mean, they came down to Louisiana and they raised hogs and they boiled the lard and fried beignets, and they gave New Orleans its most famous bread to date. So we are the people who came here. Yeah.
Let's talk about recipes though for a moment. You cannot pick your favorite kid. I know that, but and do you have a one that you go back to and you think to yourself, I love this one, or do you think or one that you're like, I gotta master it. I know I have it in my book, but I haven't cracked the code yet.
Yeah, it's probably the cover cake. So you can pull up the cover, John, again. Yeah, it's the pound cake on the cover, because that recipe came from a woman in South Georgia. And what I love about it is its beautiful texture. It's a cream cheese pound cake. But the story is that this was her lifetime cake. And this is what she made all her life. So she figured out a process to make this cake. Every time you add an egg to the batter, you add a half a cup of flour. Egg, half a cup of flour, egg. So you keep a wonderful batter consistency. You don't have any separation in the batter whatsoever. You don't overbeat. She tells you how many. That recipe, I don't just appreciate the taste of that cake, but that person who spent her life perfecting it. Yeah.
That's really fantastic. And also, if you keep going with that ratio, you eventually have a 2 pound, a 10 pound, a 20 pound cake.
There you go.
Yeah. Dennis, let me ask you that same question in your book about Cook with Confidence.
Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, you're right. It is as someone who was literally a musician and was asked what's your favorite song to play, and now is asked what your favorite recipe is. I've had to deal with this for many years.
Yeah.
It is a horrible and wonderful question. I don't want to pick this just because you brought it up, but the reality is, I think that to me, the best food in the world is food that reminds you of when you were 10. And when for me, as an example, my mom's pizza to me is my favorite pizza. It's certainly not the best pizza in the world. It's not bad. I've been fortunate enough to have pizza in places like Rome and New York City and Chicago, John, where you are. And all of that I would say is technically better than my mom's. But when I eat my mom's pizza, it reminds me of being a kid and coming home from baseball practice as a 10-year-old boy. So there's so much story and nostalgia in that, which is to say, that Frico recipe to me is comfort food embodied. For someone who grew up in our part of the world, it is the biggest, most comfort packed dish that you could possibly eat.
Like, Dennis, forgive me. I was just flipping through this thing. I'm like, what should I make before we have a chance to hang out together? And that's the one I went to, and that's just so surprising to me that I got it right.
It's, I mean, honestly, if you grew up certainly in the Acadian part of New Brunswick, You're feeling a little under the weather, you are eating chicken frico every single time. If it's a cold, really rainy, damp, gross day outside, you're getting chicken frico. And most people who are from here have it stored in the freezer all winter long, just in case that rainy day comes. We will always have it on the ready.
So
All right.
is it like dumplings? I mean, so tell me about chicken frico. Are the dumplings those beignets that the Acadians then fried when they got to Louisiana?
They're not. So it's. But I will say, if we keep talking about beignets, I'm going to have to book a flight to Louisiana because now that's all I want. So it's a traditional dough based dumpling. The thing with frico is that some are savory, or savory is the main ingredient, which is unique. I have found unique to anything in the chicken soup world. It is a very simple, it's a humble soup. It kind of, if I was to post that on social media or something like that, I'll get a lot of folks who'll ask me if it's a multiple soup, because it's kind of what it looks like. Where the dumplings themselves are more kind of dough ball consistencies. But it is very comforting. It's, if you like chicken soup.
Yeah, it does look like matzo ball. Yeah.
Yeah, and it did catch my eye exactly because of the savory, because I'm always trying to figure out how to use it. I bought it, and I'm always trying to figure out how to use it. And it's a great flavor, though. It's a great flavor.
It's a great flavor, and it's, someone in Anne's space could explain exactly why, probably more than I could, that it's so prevalent in Acadian cooking. But it is in many of our dishes.
The herb savory?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. It would have been what their ancestor packed with them and brought them over to that part of Canada. It probably went into boudin making and sausage making when they got to Louisiana. Yeah.
That's really interesting. So let's talk for a minute about the confidence part of it. And Dennis, I'm not trying to expropriate your title, Cook with Confidence, but I mean, you're trying to, is there the technique that every home cook should have, in your opinion? What's the thing that's everybody should have an 8-inch, carving knife or a chef's knife. But what's the technique that if you need that go-to, you need that quiet, still place, and you're like, I know how to do this?
Honestly, this is my 2 cents, and I feel like it's worked for so many home cooks that I've come across. The thing that's missing in most kitchens is fun. I think that so I don't think it's technique. I don't think it's how you chop vegetables. All of that helps, obviously. All of it makes you a technically better cook. I have had a lot of technically prepared food that's prepared very well that was a little soulless. Certainly not to disparage anyone's food. But I have had food that was cooked with love and passion and excitement and joy that's technically not necessarily on the same page, but it tastes so much fuller and richer. And I think that we almost have an epidemic with a lot of folks where they'll have friends coming over on Friday night, as an example, and they're nervous on Wednesday. What am I going to cook? Are they going to like it? Am I going to get timings right? And it consumes them. But at the end of the day, people just want to spend time with you. They want to gather at the table. I think that we're better people when we spend more time dining together and literally breaking bread. And I think for me, I wanted to kind of obviously show some of the techniques and the grandfathered information that I've picked up along the way from all of these incredible chefs and home cooks that I've worked alongside, both in restaurants and in other spaces, to really break down food. But at the end of the day, to make food more accessible and fun and joyful. So then when you go into the kitchen, it's not nerve wracking. You just go in with excitement. And I think food is one of those things where if you have a challenging day, you can go into the kitchen, put your favorite record on, maybe pour a glass of wine, maybe not, and you can reset. And if you have the best day ever, you can go in and do the exact same thing and celebrate around food. It's the one constant that we have that I think should only be fueled by joy.
I think that's a lovely answer. I thought you were going to say paring knife, but I think about Jacques Pepin and other folks like that who are technically very adept. And the reason I like watching them, and the reason I would love to sit in their restaurant or to read their books is because they'll have a glass of wine with it. That's really something else.
Yeah, and I think Anna, I'm not sure what you feel. Obviously, I think the thing is, when you're starting in food, I think it's a challenging. because of the access and the invent of the internet, and the fact that we have access to so many videos and recipes, and everything is online. I think a lot of folks start their culinary journey thinking, I have to perfect hollandaise sauce, or I have to perfect a meringue, or I have to perfect something, and forget that there's steps along the way to get to a place where you're able to efficiently pull that off. And what they do is they'll make that hollandaise sauce, as an example, and it'll split, and they'll be disappointed, rather than starting from A to B. And I think for me, you asked early on, John, why my kind of North Star is the home cook. It's because I want to take people from here to here. Eventually, once they get here, they'll go to the Jacques Pepin, or they'll go to the Noma cookbook. And I think that's amazing. But I think my goal as a cookbook author is to help drive people from here to here, really just so that they fall in love with food and creating beautiful moments at the table. I think that once you fall in love with that, your culinary interest just grows from there, and then you get into those more technical aspects.
Yeah, and I've always been intimidated by baking, because I think about the art of cooking, but the science. I mean, the science of baking. I've never brought a scale out to smoke meat, but I have to bring a scale out. How do you break the rules of that, though?
Well, first of all, I want to kind of answer your question to Dennis, because I have thought on that too. I wonder if what we see on television with a stream with and learning to cook, and how it changed through the years. I think back to some of the early television programs with Julia Child and even Jacques Pepin, and how that experience was one of it was entertainment, but you also learned something. It was complete entertainment. And then I think once cooking shows got competitive, that's where it changed for me, because I think that's what you're asking. I felt like that's where the home cook was under pressure to perform, to succeed, to beat who? What? Your best friend down the street? Your mother? I mean, who wants to beat her? She knows everything. So that's where I think they missed the mark with the home cooks. Maybe they instilled so much energy and all in young cooks, and they aspired to be chefs, but I think they left behind the home cooks. And then to your question about, I don't know, when we smoke meat and we do that kind of cooking at my house, it's not just, we're not super technical, but we've got an instant read thermometer. We've got digital thermometer. I mean, I think that's a back pocket kind of tool. And I think what I did in my book, as far as baking recipes go, was for every recipe, I've got cup measures and I've got grams.
That's true. You do. Yeah.
I didn't want to alienate anybody because I want everybody to bake. But at the end of the day, you're going to have more precision, and you're going to be able to duplicate that recipe again if you use the same flour and you use the scale. I was teaching a class actually in Georgia, the University of Georgia, about a month ago, and somebody from the back row asked, well, how do I go home and duplicate my grandmother's recipes? And I said, well, first of all, pull out your phone and take a video of her cooking, and then get a scale and bring it into the kitchen and zero it out and put everything on there. So the science part of baking allows you to duplicate the same result again.
No, thank you for that, because I'm very interested in eating good food from people who love to make it, and the precision of it matters to me. I also like to be able to bring out a dish and celebrate with neighbors and friends and family with something that I got that proud of place for. And both of you, I think, have that kind of joy as cookbook authors and writers, as researchers, as historians of your particular place, but also discovering other places. I like this conversation tonight very much. We're also turning the corner, though, to the end of our time together, and it is National Library Week, I mentioned at the beginning. And so part of our Sing for the Supper theme, whenever I'm doing a cookbook conversation, is I need a good story. I need a good library story or a good librarian story. And sometimes they're library stories. Sometimes it's about the place, but sometimes it's about the people who work there too. So I'm wondering if you got anything to share. No pressure.
Okay. Dennis, you want to go first?
I definitely have one. And I'll try to make it as brief as possible, because I know we're at the end of our time. I moved to Nashville, Tennessee. from the East Coast of Canada. Was a musician for about 8 years, had an opportunity to work in a studio in Franklin. Anne will know it well, I'm sure. And so I went down there, and the musician's lifestyle is rich in only one thing: experience. So I was, it was a struggle. And at the suggestion of a friend, I'd spent about 10 years eating on the road, late night, playing different shows. And obviously that food wasn't great for me. So I needed to take care of myself, needed to take care of my health a little bit. And I needed something that I could control. But this is years ago, before real social media existed. And a friend said, he kind of had a little bit of an intervention, let's call it. And he said, you need to start eating better. I said, well, I don't know how to do that. And at this point, I'd never really cooked in my life, not, aside from what I cooked with my family. And he said, well, why don't you go to the library and borrow some cookbooks?
Yeah.
And I vividly remember looking at him and saying, you're crazy. The library does not have cookbooks. Clearly, there's a whole section, and both my cookbooks and Anne's cookbooks are in there now. But I went to the Nashville Public Library. I got my first library card as an adult, and I borrowed 2 cookbooks. I brought them home. He said, why'd you bring those home? And I said, well, the guy on the cover seems like a happy guy, and the recipes seem like I could probably pull them off. It turns out they were Jamie Oliver books.
Oh, yeah.
And I cooked a dish that I had made as a musician years before, and flash forward now, that turned into me becoming a chef, working at so many different places. But it literally all started with me visiting the National Public Library. So I will forever be grateful for both libraries and the access that they give to folks like me.
The guy who's the director at the time, I'm sure, was named Ken Oliver. He's going to be thrilled to hear that you got this start professionally from that collection. That's fantastic. So
love that.
Yeah. And who do you have, or where do you have?
Well, I think the story I recall is that many years ago when I wrote a book called The Cake Mix Doctor, that was the one that sold all those millions of copies. I got an email from a woman in Chattanooga, and she was a police officer, and she had a couple of small children. And she told me that she had checked out The Cake Mix Doctor from the public library in Chattanooga, and she started making the recipes, and she realized that these are recipes that she could sell.
Oh.
As a result, she left her job as a police officer and became a baker and started baking out of the home so that she could spend more time with her kids. And I think that did not only, it made me really feel good because I didn't realize I was writing a feminist cookbook at the time when I wrote The Cake Mix Doctor, but I was. And you're right, access to ingredients, access to recipes. I mean, libraries make it possible. Yeah.
No, that both of you have sung beautifully for your supper tonight. That story, Dennis, in particular, about try it before you buy it. It's one of the great leverage points of public libraries. And I also get things out of the library, try them out, buy them for myself, and then I do something else that your publisher would really appreciate, which is I give them as gifts too. And Anne, I know that you know that there's a tremendous amount of teaching that goes on at public libraries as well around commercial kitchens, workshop kitchens at public libraries too. I don't know if either of you have ever done that circuit before, but if you want to make some introductions, I can hook you up.
Yeah, I actually have in Arkansas, and I'm actually speaking to a library here in this area toward the end of April. So yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. All right, Anne, Dennis, it's been a real pleasure to be with you tonight. Again, I want to hold up the titles. I'm sorry, hold up the books. Baking the American South. Anne, this is lovely. Dennis, Cooking with Confidence. Happy National Library Week, team. Thanks for taking a little time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
I'm going to wave at the camera. I'm going to put the title card, and I want to talk to you in the green room for 1 second when we're done. Good night, all.
Good night.